Hey guys, BentleyBlonde here. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a highly requested and long overdue video, and it is my labor and delivery story. As most of you guys know, Colton is already 4.5 months old, so I figured I probably needed to film this before he's like up and walking out the door to go to college. So my pregnancy was a little bit different because I didn't experience practice contractions, also known as Braxton Hicks contractions, at any point through my entire pregnancy. Like, none whatsoever. So when I went into labor with Colton at 38 weeks, I had no idea that this is what it was going to feel like or that these were contractions or anything like that. And also by 38 weeks, I had not been checked out by my OB to see how dilated that I was. I was supposed to get checked at my next appointment, but that wasn't for a few days and I ended up having him before that. So I didn't know like if I was dilated at all. I had no practice contractions. So yeah, it was a little bit unusual. So this was a Saturday, October 3rd of last year, and I was just a hot mess because first of all I had a really bad urinary tract infection, like the worst UTI ever, and my OB had just put me on antibiotics, so I was on antibiotics late in pregnancy. I was feeling like total crap. It was just not a good situation. And then to make matters even better, I had just broken my toe, and I'm talking like severely shattered, broke my toe that same week. So not only was I in a ton of pain, hugely pregnant, but I was also like hobbling around. It was crazy. And also that weekend there was a hurricane coming. If you guys remember Hurricane Joaquin last October, it came up the coast, and luckily it just kind of skimmed us, but we still got a lot of wind and rain here in Maryland. So when there's pressure changes in the atmosphere, a lot of women go into labor. So I was already kind of worried that with the storm coming up the coast that it might happen. I actually had a wedding to attend that Saturday night, October 3rd, and luckily I decided not to go because, you know, I had the UTI, the broken toe, it was pouring rain, and I was just kind of worried about everything. So we decided not to go, and we just had a normal Saturday night, and then at 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, October 4th, my water broke in bed. Like, I woke up and I didn't know what had happened. I was like, did I pee myself? Did my water break? So I woke my husband up and I was like, I think my water broke. And he like sat up in bed and was like, oh my God, is this happening? And we were both just kind of freaking out because we couldn't believe, you know, it was like still 2 weeks until I was supposed to be delivering. And it was just like everything was a first for us. So I said, like, you know, we should probably get up, take a shower, get ready for the day. So I got up and I ran the shower, and before I got in the shower, I went pee and my mucus plug came out. And I was like, oh my God, like what is going on? Everything is happening so fast. So I got in the shower, and as soon as I started shampooing my hair, I started getting contractions. And they weren't just like working up to being bad contractions. They were immediately like extremely painful, intense contractions. So luckily we have a seat in our shower, so I sat down and I was like, oh my God, like this is definitely really happening. So I hurried and showered really quickly and got out, and my husband started timing them, and they were a little bit under 4 minutes apart already. And so I'm just like, what is happening? Because like my water breaks, 2 seconds later my mucus plug comes out, then contractions start, they're already less than 4 minutes apart. Like, I was under the impression from other people's stories that all of this was like a way longer process. Like, my mom was in labor with me for 2 days. So I thought that, you know, this wasn't going to happen this quickly. So while I'm getting dressed, putting my hair up, putting my makeup on, yes, I put a little bit of makeup on to go to the hospital because heck no, y'all, I am not having everybody up in my face taking pictures and everything with not a stitch of makeup on. So I applied that stuff through the contractions. I was literally like bent over just putting foundation on. Priorities, people. So anyways, my husband was still timing my contractions, and by the time I was done getting ready, which was maybe 15 or 20 minutes, they were already less than 3 minutes apart. I was like, okay, we're really progressing quickly. So we didn't eat breakfast or anything. We just got our bags, we jumped in the car, and we started heading to the hospital. And I think we got to the hospital about 7:30, 7:45-ish, and went straight up to the maternity ward, and I got all signed in. And by that point, I was like doubled over because the contractions were pretty bad. And I got the last labor and delivery room. Hallelujah, because it was really busy up in the ward that day because, like I said, the hurricane was coming up the coast. I'm telling you, those pressure changes and fluctuations will just put women into labor. I don't know what it is. So there was a lot of women in labor when I was there. I got checked in, I got my room, I changed into my gown, I gave a urine sample. I was like dying by this point. And so I was just laying in the bed. They were hooking me all up and everything, and they said that the anesthesiologist was in the OR right now, so they couldn't do my epidural right away. Because when I filled out my birth plan, y'all, with the OB, I was like, chuck, to get an epidural as soon as possible, because I am not trying to do no natural birth. So I was like, okay, hopefully that surgery goes fast, because I am ready to get this needle in my back. And my doctor came in, I think about an hour later, and checked me and said that I was 3 centimeters. And I was like, that's it? Like, oh my God, I feel like I'm gonna die. I laid there having contractions for about 3 hours, just straight up suffering. And then finally, the anesthesiologist came in at about 11 o'clock when I was 6 centimeters and gave me my epidural. And I like instantly felt so much better. The only bad thing about my epidural was that literally only half of my body was super numb, and then the other side of my body was like, kind of numbish. Like, I couldn't feel it completely, but I could definitely feel things more than I could on the other side of my body. And they said that this happens sometimes, so that was a little bit scary, because I was kind of afraid that like I would feel things on one side and not the other. But I was just happy that I couldn't feel my contractions like I could before. I knew I was having one without looking at the contraction monitor, but it wasn't anything like it was before. Shout out to all my natural childbirth mamas out there. You guys are like warrior princesses to me, because girl, that epidural was like the best ever. So I got my epidural at 11 o'clock, and then by noon I was 9 centimeters. So I went from 6 to 9 in an hour, which they were actually surprised about, because normally the epidural will actually slow down the entire process. But no, honey, like Colton was ready. I was just rolling. So the doctor was like, I think we're gonna have a baby by halftime. And I was really shocked, because the Redskins were playing, that's our NFL team at that time, and it was already lunchtime, and he thought we were gonna have a baby before halftime. Like, I was shocked. So before I even knew what was happening, the OB came in, they turned the overhead lights on, they like rolled my bed forward, and I just thought he was gonna do another check, and it was like time to push. I was shocked. I think he tried to surprise me, because he knows I have anxiety, so he didn't want me to know what was coming. And next thing I know, my legs are up, my husband's on one side, the nurses are like all surrounded around me, and it was time to push. So I started pushing at 1:15, and like halfway through my pushing, the nurses were like, oh, he's crowning, do you want to feel it, do you want to see it? And I was just like, I think I even cursed. I was like, no, I don't want to see it, I don't want to feel it, because they wanted to hand me a mirror to look at him crowning, and I was like, no, like I will never be able to have a baby again if you put that mirror in my hand. So I think I pushed for 20 or 25 minutes, and then the doctor asked me if I wanted an episiotomy. I'm like, I don't even want to know what you're doing down there, just do what you have to do. I did end up getting an episiotomy, unfortunately. We went as long as we could with me trying to push him out without having to do that, but he just wasn't going to come. So he did the episiotomy, and then a couple pushes later, out came Colton at 1:43. And I thought that that was a neat time, because a lot of you guys said that that was like I love you time. And they brought him over and laid him on me, and it was like literally the best moment of my life. Like, I know all moms say that that moment when you first look into your baby's eyes is like life-changing, but it really is. Like, you can't even understand like how special that moment is until you're there and you see your child. Like, I'll just never forget it. Anyways, he weighed 8 pounds even, so he was a big boy. I was really surprised, because I actually didn't get that huge during my pregnancy. And he was 20 inches long. So yeah, he was a big, fat chunker. So my husband cut the umbilical cord, and they were getting everything cleaned up. And I noticed that the doctor was just down there for a lot longer than I thought he was going to be. So I was just kind of like, what's going on? My mom was in the room, and she was looking really worried, because she actually used to be an OB nurse. And so the doctor told me that he couldn't get the bleeding to stop. It turns out that I had had a pretty significant postpartum hemorrhage right after I had him, and they could not get my uterus to contract. Because after you have the baby, the uterus has to sort of contract and cinch up to stop the bleeding, and mine did not. So I was just gushing blood. And I could actually hear it, and at the time I was like so like in my own world. I didn't even realize I was like basically bleeding to death. I thought that the noise I was hearing of like liquid was like fluid from the delivery. Like, I didn't know anything. So we're literally filling up like these plastic tubs that you would like throw up in or whatever with my blood, because it just would not stop coming out. I would say that he massaged my uterus for like 30 minutes or even more than that. It was a long time. And they still couldn't get the bleeding to stop. So they ended up giving me an injection of Pitocin and an injection of Methergin in my thigh to basically help my uterus to contract by itself. So anyways, at that point, after I got that, I guess my bleeding subsided a little bit, so he sewed me up, and the baby got wheeled out, and then I was kind of like resting and in recovery for a little while, waiting for the epidural to wear off. But once my epidural wore off a little bit, they helped me to the bathroom, which was probably like the weirdest experience of my life. Like, you lose all shame at this point because like you're half naked, you're bleeding everywhere, somebody's helping you go pee, like... It's just crazy. You'll hear stories when you're pregnant about labor and delivery, but nobody really tells you about the recovery period. And for me, that was like the hardest part of the entire thing. Like, I would have a baby 20 times over before I went through recovery again. Like, it was just rough. And I don't think it helped that I had postpartum hemorrhage because I was like super weak and anemic. So I'm sure other people's recovery experiences are different, but for me, it was just so much blood. Every time I went to the bathroom, it was just like a murder scene. Like, I was shocked. So anyways, yeah, you've got your big diaper on, they're wiping for you, you feel like you're like 80 years old and that your life is going to be over. So they put me in the wheelchair and took me to the recovery room, and that was when I started feeling really sick. Like, all my family was coming in, everybody wanted to see the baby because he was all cleaned up and everything, and I was just like, because by now the Pitocin had really kicked in and the Methergin had kicked in, and I was essentially going through contractions and labor all over again. Pitocin is what they will give you to induce labor, so they had given me that to make my uterus contract, and it essentially put me into labor again. So I went through contractions again after having the baby, and my epidural was worn off, so I was just so miserable, and they gave me Percocet to try to help with the pain, and that made me really nauseous. So the whole entire first day, like, I was miserable. So yeah, recovery was kind of rough just because of the postpartum hemorrhage and because I was anemic, but I would literally do everything a million times over to have my little Colton again. He is like, he's the best ever. He's my whole world. So I'm really excited to introduce him to you guys, so I'm gonna go get him. He's downstairs with his daddy, so I will be right back. Can you say hi, everyone? Can you say hi? Show them your pretty blue eyes. Can you show them your pretty blue eyes? Look at you. Say hi. Hi. He gets really shy in front of the camera. But yeah, like I said, he is going to be 5 months in about a week and a half. So getting to be a big man, huh? And say he's just over 17 pounds. I think that the pediatrician said he was in the 87th percentile for height and weight. So he's this mommy's little chunker. Say, are you mommy's little chunky baby? We're definitely in the teething phase right now. He hasn't cut any teeth yet, but he's got the little rosy cheeks. We're drooling like crazy. We're chewing on everything. So I think we're gonna be cutting a tooth here soon. He just wanted his binky. But anyways, so this is little man. You can see a ton more pictures of him on Instagram. I'm a lot more active on there just because it's easier as a mommy to post pictures on that website than it is to film. But I definitely wanted to introduce him to you guys, my YouTube family. Alright guys, I will talk to you. Oh, hungry. Okay, I think somebody's hungry. He's about to like eat his own hand off. So I will talk to you guys next time. Say bye!